All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good to. I know we're all excited to visit with you, and I think you're going to be in for a great session. We're going to get started. I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves, and then have them also throw in their company's particular interest in ag tech. So we'll start to my left, George Kellerman.
Thank you. My name is George Kellerman. I'm the COO and general partner at Yamaha Motor Ventures and Laboratories, Silicon Valley. We're the corporate venturing and strategic business development arm of Yamaha Motor. Most of you know us for our motorcycles, side-by-sides, outboard motors, and other various recreational vehicles. What a lot of people don't realize is we also have unmanned helicopters that are used in agricultural spraying. Actually, over 1/3 of all rice fields in Japan are sprayed using our helicopters. And within our team, I'm heading up our agricultural robotics and automation initiatives. We're really focused on how we could take our existing technologies and apply those to the future of agricultural automation.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, George.
Hi, it's my turn maybe. My name is Kenta Yasukawa. I'm CTO of Soracom. I'm working as a kind of CTO of the company. We are focusing on cloud secure connectivity. So, when it comes to Internet of Things and automated agriculture, you need to somehow connect different kinds of devices to the network and then to the cloud, where usually, you implement the intelligence as an application. So we focus on that part. So our platform has more than 8,000 customers who have done all different kinds of connected something. And I really love connected blah, blah, blah. So I love, connected cars, connected snowplows, I love connected buses. And this session, I more talk about, connected farms and connected cows and connected fishes. So that's what I'm excited about.
So is blah, blah, blah a tech term or an ag term, Nolan?
Oh, certainly a tech term. Hi, my name is Nolan Paul from Driscoll's. I lead up our open innovation work. Driscoll's is a berry company that has a large R&D department focused on breeding of berries, as well as investing in ag tech for our grower base. And so, as a berry company, ag tech is really at the heart of the present and the future, and everything from labor to automation for indoor farming to water to drones. It's all in play.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Nolan. Carl?
Thanks. So I'm Carl Vause. I'm CEO of Soft Robotics. And what Soft Robotics is, and I think you heard this morning, everyone talking about the gripping problem and how do we get robots to be able to handle wide and varied objects. Our core technology is we use material science to solve a rigid numerical computation problem and bringing adaptability and agility to robotics. Now, why is that important to ag tech? Is if you think about it, is every berry, every tomato, every slice of beef, every chicken drumstick in the world is different in size, shape, and weight, and variability has been the bugaboo, if you will, of robotics. And so, the fact that we can solve that problem makes us very important into bringing automation into food handling, food processing, food packaging, and then since it's a material science play, we can make all of our systems out of FDA-approved food-safe materials and bring that extra margin of safety there.
Fair enough. All right, before we jump into a few questions, and I'm just going to ask each of the panelists to comment on each of them. Let me just quickly, Western Growers is a California, Arizona membership-based organization with fresh processing and then the fresh commodity side, and it represents 50+% of North America's fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts. So what you're going to hear is not only is it interesting as we go through this, we have a huge sense of urgency in the specialty crop industry because we've identified out of our three critical priorities, labor is a house on fire. So this discussion is absolutely critical to our industry. And so with that in mind, and there's to some degree the robotic revolution is underway, but how are robotics changing, and will they continue to change our industry, George?
Well, just your comment about house on fire, I would like to just take a moment to give our thoughts to those who are suffering in Napa and Sonoma. It's devastating the industry and throughout the state, actually. But what I would also say is what you mentioned, labor is really becoming a critical issue right now. And what a lot of people don't realize is there just isn't enough labor. For the last 2 months roughly, all of the major fruits and vegetables have been going through their peak harvest season, and they just can't find enough laborers to do the work. So part of it is we have to come up with automation solutions if we want to even continue to eat the fruits and vegetables that we enjoy. But with robotics, it's really around advancing the technologies and the vision systems, kind of the stuff that Carl's working on at Soft Robotics, the end effectors, the ability to actually pick and identify different kinds of fruits when their textures and the qualities may be very different. We're just coming of age with a lot of that stuff. A lot of the stuff you heard earlier today was around factory automation, where it was really a controlled environment. You're dealing with maybe hard physical objects, and they're always the same size and shape and weight. But now we're moving outdoors, where the lighting is different, the weather, the climate, all these variables that you can't, by nature, you cannot standardize. And so how do we operate in that environment? And we're just now getting to the point where we can.
Okay, fair enough. Kenta?
Yeah, that question is so important, especially the labor is also becoming a big issue in Japan. I was born in Japan. I just moved here recently, so I'm local now here. But I was born in Japan, and I have many friends and families living in Japan. And the population is getting older and older. Probably it's a common issue in many developed countries, but it's happening faster and faster in Japan. Because of that, labor is becoming more important issue, and for that, actually, we need a technical solution. And robotics is definitely one important aspect that we need to explore. And when it comes to robotics, as same as many other technologies, it's evolving and evolving so fast recently. So from our perspective, we don't do robotics or AI by ourselves, but we like to help our customers to, for example, upgrade robotics software or machine learning engines over the air, so that their hardwares can stay always, latest version of software, so that they can do more productive things.
Okay, thank you. Nolan, how's robotics changing the strawberry industry?
Well, we hope it will soon. We have probably 50 to 60 people per acre who are harvesting our crops. And when you think about something like strawberries, it's very difficult to go out there in the heat for 10 hours a day, and you're bending down and trying to pick up that fruit. And so it's been very difficult, not only with the cost of labor going up, but actually just trying to get labor to pick our crops. It's very, very difficult. We're investing to try to change the production systems to come out of soil, so the harvesters aren't having to bend down. It's a more ergonomic way to pick. We also think that will make it easier for a robot to come in and pick the fruit, because the fruit will hang down. But it's critical for the future of specialty crops. I mean, it's just labor in 10 years, even 10, 15 years, even in places like Mexico will be, I think, probably less and less. And so robotics are going to be, if we don't get it, we're in serious trouble.
Okay. And Carl, talk a little bit, as you answered the question, talk a little bit. We were chatting the other day, and I asked you, has your focus primarily been in a processing plant or in the field? Because when we hear agriculture, we all tend to maybe think in terms of one thing or another, and it's actually a much more diverse, pardon the ag pun, field than that. So how do you look at how things are changing?
No, that's a great question. So I think when we talk about food robotics, people either want to know harvesting, is there going to be a robot out there harvesting in the fields or picking things off the trees, or is it going to be cooking my hamburger at the local restaurant? Everyone forgets that food is a $1 trillion market in the U.S., and there's this whole supply chain of how does it get from the field to the supermarket or the restaurant, the point of use. And right now, that's where I think robotics can work. And so I think solving, just as George said and just as Nolan said, solving robots in the field there's more work to be done. There's a perception challenge. But what we can do today, Soft Robotics, is we can go in and address the labor shortage in the pack houses and in the processing. And that's been a big benefit. I don't know if everybody here is aware of it, but I think you guys quote 15 to 20%, and I think California as a whole quotes 15 to 20% is abandoned in the fields of produce.
We're probably like 30.
Okay, 30%.
Right.
So just to kind of put that in perspective, is if the U.S. could actually get food out of the fields and into the market, we would be a net exporter of fresh produce and fruit, which would actually create jobs in the U.S. and grow the produce. And if not, the rest of it stays in the field and becomes greenhouse gases, right? So the important thing is, to answer your question, is we're primarily focused in once again the labor problem, but getting the labor problem in that critical part of the supply chain is after we get food out of the field is how do we get it to the consumer so that it's fresh, it's ripe, it's ready to go.
You actually just brought something up that's very interesting because if it's 30% is never making it out of the field, there's another 20% that's getting damaged through the logistics and supply chain because they're breaking the cold chain, they're not keeping the temperature at the proper levels, all the way up until it gets to the store, even sometimes at the store. So there are a lot of opportunities to automate and track and have better data around that as well.
Yeah, completely agree.
Well, and the other thing is if you talk about leaving 50% doesn't get to market, that's going to affect folks' food prices because, we're talking about a lot of commodities, which are supply and demand. George, I'm a little intrigued by something you all are doing where you're, and I applaud you for it, going, there are 400 different specialty crops in California. So this notion of we're going to automate, it is not one size fits all. The grape discussion is different than the pepper discussion, which is different than the romaine discussion. But, for instance, when you were visiting a major grape player the other day, just talk a little bit about what you saw and some of the challenges that represent.
So last week we visited, we took some engineers with us, and we visited table grape harvesting, which is still an extremely manual process. Imagine a vine with grapes, with clusters of grapes. A worker will grab that cluster, take some shears, clip it, and I originally was thinking, well, that's all they got to do. I then proceeded to watch this person spend another 30 to 45 seconds just trimming the cluster so that it looked good, so it could be presentable on a table. There were, some of the grapes were already starting to shrivel up and kind of looked like raisins, and he was clipping those off, and he was looking at anything that just looked like a blemish or bad. The time involved in just handling that one cluster. And then he would put it down into a little wheelbarrow, and he would do that again. And when his wheelbarrow was full, he would roll that down to the end of the row, and there was a person there packing the grapes into a plastic clamshell or a bag. And she was also doing a secondary kind of, it's got to be exactly 3 pounds, but we put in a little more than 3 pounds just to make sure, and kind of making it was almost like a puzzle. She was taking different size clusters together so that they'd fit in the clamshell. It was way more labor intensive than I thought. I thought it was as simple as just cutting the cluster off and away you go. The automation challenges are going to be really tough with that.
And Kenta, and all of the vineyards and orchards that George visited were, of course, right near a major city. Connectivity, broadband, none of those things are issues, right? Or is that one of the challenges?
Yeah, definitely. So, not everywhere is connected. So because of that, right now, the industry, more like telecom and also internet industry, is now focusing on different kind of radio technologies so that you can create a huge, in a sense, huge hotspot so that farmers can actually create their own connected sensors and connected actuators so that they can automate things. So that's something we are also working on so that, this kind of, for example, maybe some kind of cameras. Like I just brought one of our customers' device here. The company is called Kakasi. if you know Japanese word, kakashi means scarecrow. So this one currently has a humidity and temperature sensor, and it has a built-in camera. So maybe this could actually monitor the grapes and see if there is any bad situation in before, so that this part of the grape field needs more extensive checking. This part is always good, so maybe you don't have to check so carefully. That kind of information can be sent to the cloud side and analyzed. So for that kind of situation, we are working on to connect everywhere. And we are working on, for example, low power radio technologies so that you can embed sensors in the field. So these days, proprietary technologies called Sigfox and LoRaWAN are widely deployed. We are working on that too.
Okay. Nolan, is when you look at robotics and being applied to strawberries, is it just a technology issue, or do you have to reevaluate your growing practices? What's everything involved as you look at automating what you do and make sure you have workers to get it done?
We really combine three things. One is, so there's the technology itself, the robotics. You have the growing system. So I mentioned that we're moving to a tabletop system. For other crops, we're going into pots, into a substrate growing system. But it really starts all the way back at the genetics level too, right? So we're now selecting types of berries where the truss length is longer, or the berries are able to present themselves more. That's really not even just for a robot, that's for people too, to make it easier to pick. And so I think we really see the future of technology being applied at the field level. It's a combination of the genetics, right? Being able to change the architecture or select better the architecture of the plant, the production systems to present that fruit in a better way, and then the technology itself.
Now, and since you get to be the only ag guy on the panel,
you're an ag guy,
I
right?
am the salesman married to a farmer's daughter, yes, but I'm the moderator. I'm not supposed to weigh in. So, but take what you just said and apply that to some of the other commodities. There are a lot of other disciplines that are going to be involved in this process, aren't there? Besides just robotics and technology, who else needs to be involved? The seed people?
I think you've seen that with the lettuce, and bring in the, was it for romaine or for iceberg, bringing up the lettuce so you can take a water gun to get underneath it. So I think it is, definitely going all the way to the seed companies. You've seen it with cherries, how they've changed how cherries look. It used to be, a huge tree, and now it's actually looking more like grapes. So it's definitely more than just taking the technology to solving how you grow now. It's changing how you grow now to be able to suit the technology. It'll be probably somewhere in the middle.
Okay. And Carl, when you think about some of the challenges in robotics, there you were, nice and secure in the middle of a processing plant, and all of a sudden people go, well, come on out with us to the field, because George wants to tell you about his experience. What are going to be the challenges?
Great question. So I fundamentally think you can split all of robotics down into one of three parts. You have mobility, which, we've talked about autonomous vehicles all day long. If you've been in a combine recently, a John Deere combine, they're pretty much hand-off things. So mobility is there. You can get something to drive around pretty well. Then the second part is perception, and the third part's grasping. A big part has been grasping, is how do I get a robot to handle all these delicate items that vary in size, shape, and weight without damaging them, so I can reduce the waste of the processing. But the other part is that perception. Robotic perception today is very, very challenging. And if you go out into the field, and this is something I always tell folks, is just go down to Salinas and just over a week go into the fields at different times. And as the sun changes, if you get overcast, then the color of the berries are very different to a robotic system. And so we are continue to do a lot of R&D work in harvesting, and we can pick the majority of items that people are asking us to pick, but really getting the lighting right and figuring out how to do the perception, I think, is the next big hurdle we've got to figure out.
Okay. I would just add one thing to what Nolan was saying about the things that they look at. And the other thing that we're going to have to overcome are cultural practices. The vineyard that I visited, they have 200 full-time employees. They have something like, I can't remember how many acres, 6,000 or 7,000 acres of wine, of table grapes. But during the harvest season right now, they have up to 6,000 migrant workers that are in their fields. But those are not their employees. They're being contracted through what are called farm labor contractors. And each FLC might be a crew of 50 to 100 people. They bring their own equipment. They bring their own sorting tables, their own umbrellas, their own bathrooms. And so you not only, you can't just go to the grower and say, I'll automate this for you. You have to deal with, these are often mom and pop shops. They're small little farm labor contractors. You have to overcome the cultural practices of how they actually source their workers, how they incentivize their workers, and how they actually operate in the field. So there's going to be a lot of these little details that we're going to have to work out in order to be successful in agriculture automation.
Okay. Well, and I think that raises, now, and having listened to this, and now speaking as an ag guy, we if you are a grower, you are programmed to complain at the drop of a hat about something, market, returns, customers. So we're really good at enunciating our problems, and see me afterwards just if you want to hear somebody whine. However, when we talk about ag tech, it keeps coming out, here are ag's problems, and you've heard Nolan talk about, hey, we got to get this thing moving. So the question I always have from a tech, what is it, where are the financial incentives, or what kind of scaling do you need to see to make this tech's worthwhile to really jump in and solve these problems? Because that seems to me to be part of the equation. What do you need to see, or where are the scaling opportunities in this whole process? Given what you just said, you've got multiple commodities, you've got a lot of different business models. So how does that come together where Yamaha goes, this is interesting?
Well, for us, it's going to fall on us to reinvent the business models. The traditional business models in agriculture are not going to work with respect to automation and robotics. If let's say we came up with an autonomous platform and we wanted to use it to carry table grapes, it's unrealistic for us to think that we're going to go to these small mom and pop FLCs and say, here, buy one, incorporate, you're going to be more efficient, so you're going to be more profitable, and I don't think that's the value proposition. It's going to be maybe providing it as a service where we can leverage that same platform across multiple crops, multiple geographies, multiple operations, so it's not just harvest. It might be used as a sprayer at one part of the year, then it's used as a harvester another part of the year, then it's used as a data collection connectivity platform another part of the year. It's really trying to find those opportunities where we can scale and standardize the equipment in a way that will work across multiple crops.
And Nolan, we needed this done within the next 2 to 3 years, right?
Yeah, we need it now.
So Kenta, how about from your perspective? What are the barriers from your side financially?
Yeah, actually, that is something we are trying to, change. When it comes to collecting data, as you said, so far, there wasn't a good kind of a way to connect different kind of things. So it was costly. If you want to, for example, connect each and every sensor with cellular network, you need to get the contract for each and every device. So when it comes to, if it's just only your phone, maybe it's okay. But if you want to do that for thousands of sensors, it's not going to scale. So we need to kind of lower the barrier because of that kind of cost side as well. So one thing we kind of came up with is that this is one of our products. This is a SIM card designed for things to get connected. So we have a pricing model so that anyone can start from a small fee, and it's basically pay-as-you-go model. So anyone can start doing a kind of small experiments, sorry, and then if that works, they can scale the environment. So I think it's important to create that kind of easy to get started type of structure for this agriculture automation as well. So a lot of our customers have started with a small experiment, like proof of concept kind of thing, maybe just with a few tens of sensors. And then they measure the cost cost versus outcome ratio. And if that makes sense, they actually go ahead and scale more. If that is not kind of cost effective, they change the structure and they do different kinds of experiments. So I think it's important to lower down this kind of cost for doing a challenge.
Okay. Nolan, as a market leader, major commodity, is this issue of scaling in terms of the folks you're dealing with to try and solve problems? Do you run into that? Are strawberries big enough on their own, or do you need to?
No, I mean, I think this is one of the big challenges that I really try to work with is that, specialty crops, there's a very high value market, but it's fragmented across, as we were talking about berries and grapes and nuts and veg. It's really difficult to have especially a startup focused on berries. And that's your market. Even though berries on a global level is still pretty big, but it's tough. And I think what we've been working on and the change we've had is that we've decided that we need to really work with our peers in the space, actually that includes the competition, but also the market leaders in, grapes and in veg and in nuts, and trying to find these areas of overlap. And those, because once you get something that scales across berries and veg and grapes, now you've got some real size. Now maybe George will want to come in and help us out and put some money into it. But it is a really big thing. And I think the things that won't scale across crops, that burden is probably going to be on us to have to build and put up the money. And I think we're just right now starting to realize that. And so we're willing to do the stuff that's very niche, but we can't pay for it all. And so it's definitely on us to try to help as much as we can figure out how can you scale some of this tech across various parts of the supply chain. So
Carl, you're dealing with a relatively young company with very cool technology trying to make it happen. What do you see as the challenges on this scaling issue?
I think the most important thing is we see, especially in ag tech, is everybody's like, I've got a huge labor problem, I've got to solve it right now. And it's that, we don't even know where to start. And so what we spend a lot of time with in our ag customers is just what we do with our consumer goods companies and our e-commerce customers is, find a less difficult problem, solve it, but know there's going to be a learning experience for the company. It's going to take time, and it's going to get you comfortable with automation. And that may not be as fun as just, hey, we're going to swing for the fences and go crazy. But I think that's the most important thing. And when we see companies that say, look, we're not going to try and solve our biggest, most existential threat of labor today, but we're going to find one portion of our supply chain that we can automate, whether it's robotics or not, learn, and then when we're ready, now we've up on the learning curve and we can scale it across the enterprise.
So George, to Nolan's point, I mean, are you willing? Is the only way you can look down the lane towards the future in terms of what's right in front of you, what Carl was talking about, or do you intuitively, or do you just specifically have to find where are there platforms in here? Where is the equivalent of ag's version of DOS? How do you get to standards?
So, and I may be misquoting this, but I heard this recently, and it's attributed to Bill Gates. I may be wrong, but he said, people are very good at overestimating what they can accomplish in a year and underestimating what they can accomplish in 10 years. And I think that's part of it. It's like, whoa, I can solve that problem. Let's go do it. And it's not going to be a 1-year problem. It's going to be a 5 or 10-year problem. And the challenge, and this is the challenge for a lot of startups in this space, is they don't have the financial resources to weather that period of time. And it becomes even worse when, as Nolan said, if you're focused on one thing, if you focus just on strawberry harvesting, you only have a couple of months each year. Well, actually, maybe about a half year because you guys harvest regularly. That's probably a bad example. Let's use apples. Apples, the entire apple harvest is done in a 2-month period. Most people here probably don't realize, but the average age of an apple on your store shelf is 9 months old. It's been in cold storage. They're all harvested during a 2-month window. And if you're focused on that particular niche, you only have one opportunity per year to test. So one of the things I look for when we're looking at startups to potentially invest in, and actually a startup we did invest in was Abundant Robotics, which is doing apple harvesting. They had a dual hemisphere strategy where when the season was done here, they packed up their robot, they went to Australia, and they started harvesting in Australia. So they at least had, pardon the pun, 2 bites at the apple to iterate and to test. And so that's, I think, going to also be very important. And that's also hard for a startup, though, to be able to pack up, move to the southern hemisphere, and keep testing. But if you don't have that, you're going to be sitting idle for 10 months out of the year.
Well, we're down to our last 5 minutes, so let me just a quick follow-up, and then we'll just let everyone close with their thoughts. So it would seem, though, even the Yamahas, the big guys, need the startups to help make the whole thing happen.
Oh, we absolutely need the startups. Because one of the things about robotics, if there's one thing that came out from all the conversations today, we're dealing with complex systems. It's not a dumb piece of machine that you can just put in the field. It's connectivity, it's vision, it's machine learning, it's material science, it's complex algorithms. And no one company is going to be an expert at all of those things. And so the approach we're taking is we want to build a portfolio of those startups, those technologies that will allow us to accelerate and be successful. And then we can leverage our global presence and our global balance sheet to be able to weather the financial turbulence that's going to come and be able to actually stay the long course, whether that's 5 years or 20 years.
Okay. Nolan, he sounds like the right guy to ask for money.
Hey, George.
I'm actually going to be visiting his fields tomorrow morning.
Ask and you shall receive. All right. Kenta, what are your final thoughts? And then let me throw in, is there a reason if you're Nolan sitting to your left, should he be optimistic about the future?
Yeah. So I completely agree on George on that. No one single company can offer end-to-end solution when it comes to agriculture, automation, or Internet of Things. So because of that, our approach is kind of similar. So we do a partner ecosystem so that we can kind of create an end-to-end solution as an ecosystem, not as a single company. So we like to definitely, build a portfolio of partners so that we can attack different kinds of issues like grape field and fish farms and everything. So I'd like to conclude that let's as a kind of ecosystem in this whole audience to attack this automation of agriculture.
Good, thank you. Nolan, you feeling better?
I feel good. No, I mean, I do. I think there's...
George is coming with the money tomorrow. So.
Well, there's just...
Maybe coffee. I don't know about money.
Just black, please. No, I mean, there's too many, smart people, too many good ideas, and too much money out there to not solve the problem. So, I mean, I think we know we can't do it in-house. We're not even going to try. We're looking as hard as we can to partner with anybody out there, and we're confident, that the world will figure it out, but we don't really have 10 years, George. We have, 5.
Well, that'll be continued.
You're at the top of the list.
All right, boys. We'll hit it back and forth over the net after the session at networking. Carl, close it up for us.
So I'll close it up. I think you should be very optimistic, and I'll tell you why. Is the U.S. is still a very young country demographically, and if you go to Japan, you look at the demographics there. If you go to China, China's 1 year younger than Japan. If you go to Western Europe. And so what we get to see is we play across the entire food chain. So we spend a lot of time in bakeries. We spend a lot of time with the protein folks across Asia and Europe. And they're kind of funding the innovation. So that's the good news for you guys and I think everybody here in the U.S. So I'm very optimistic. The labor problem's not going away. The water problem's not going away, but the technical solutions are being developed at a great pace, and so I do think you're gonna see something in the not too distant future that's gonna solve some of your problems.
Good, terrific. Well, thanks everyone, and thank all of you for your attention, and let's thank the crowd the panel, and the.